Now, let's move to the topic du jour, which is artificial intelligence. And I worry that not so much that AI is going to suddenly do all of these things that human beings could never do, but rather that it will be seen as really convincing and compelling by lots of other human beings. We're already at the place where you or I or others engaged in a conversation with AI are prepared to believe things that are just not so.
Well, in fact, this has been known by AI researchers for decades, that people are too easily fooled. That it doesn't take much to fool a user or an observer into attributing a lot of intelligence to the system that they're dealing with, even if it's rather stupid. Back in the 70s, the first chatbot, the predecessor of all these large language models, just had a list of maybe 20 or 25 canned responses to questions. It simulated a therapist. So if you say, last night I dreamed that X, it would respond, have you ever wished that X? This is not very bright.
How does that make you feel?
Tell me more. Tell me more about your mother.
Yeah.
People poured their heart out to the system. They didn't realize that they were dealing with 25 canned responses. So that is a problem in how we interpret it.
But it's really important if what you're trying to understand isn't the AI but society.
Well, yes, you're right. And in fact, one of the dangers of the large language models is that people will vest undue confidence in them.
Now, what does that mean for you in terms of limitations that need to be placed on AI? For example, I mean, children whose very malleable social functioning on the basis of what they're exposed to, should there be rules that prevent children from having relationships with AI bots?
Yes, certainly when it comes to children, there are all kinds of restrictions that we feel comfortable imposing that we don't on adults, so absolutely for children. And some kind of labeling of provenance is going to be increasingly important. But at the same time, since it's never going to be perfect, it will involve more trust in institutions that guarantee provenance. So with, say, the proliferation of deepfakes, of Joe Biden saying something that he convincingly seemingly caught on video, saying something that in fact he never said, that was just digitally formulated, it may be that we're going to have to put more trust in CNN and the BBC and the New York Times and institutions that do the due diligence, that they are not just propagating deepfakes.
At a time that the trust in those organizations is at its historic lowest.
Indeed.
So that's not credible. So given that that's not going to happen, what needs to be the response to ensure that democracies don't erode much faster than they have?
Yeah, and I don't think we know the answer. I mean, it's tempting to say, well, let's just have more regulations, but regulations can often have side effects or be ineffectual. It may be a combination of things. It may be that this will actually increase trust in the media, because ultimately, even though people can be fooled, they don't want to be lied to. They don't want to believe things that are false. So there is at least a force in the direction of people wanting some kind of veracity, and it may push them toward, if not legacy organizations, but some form of certification or credibility that films and texts are accurate.
Now, people don't want to believe things that are false. You're a psychologist, so I want to press you on this, because it seems to me that people are very happy believing things that are aligned with what they like,
well, that
irrespective of whether it's false or true.
So maybe a better way of putting it is that not everyone wants to believe in the same falsehoods. So you can't fool all the people all the time. And so even though there'll be people who are always, in fact, all of us are all too receptive to claims that are consistent with our own ideology, our own politics, our own tribal loyalties, we're still skeptical of other people's sacred beliefs. And so in a democracy, in an ecosystem of debate, criticism, airing of ideas, even if some people believe falsehoods, not everyone believes the same falsehoods. Again, since not everyone has the same commitments to the same falsehoods, you do want the truth about at least the things that aren't essential to your core identity. Those are very hard to chip away at. Fortunately, we don't all have the same ones. So even though no person will necessarily gravitate to the truth, the ideal would be to set up rules of engagement, of debate, so that the entire nation, the entire community, while indulging people with all kinds of crazy beliefs, but that the greatest majority view, consensus view, will be pushed in the direction of accuracy.